Dusk settled in, and the last rays of sunlight stretched across the Da River, painting its surface a fiery red like burning flames. A gentle breeze passed by, carrying the cool mist from the water, yet it was not enough to dispel the piercing cold within Mr. Min's heart. Perched on a large rock by the riverbank, he sat in silence, his figure as still as a statue. His back was slightly hunched, his frail shoulders weighed down by the burdens of life. His face bore deep wrinkles, each one a testament to a lifetime of enduring too many tragedies. His hollow eyes, dark and vacant, seemed to pierce through the rushing water, searching for memories long past, memories he both longed to hold onto and desperately wished to forget. In his trembling hands, a small silver bracelet glimmered under the fading sunlight. The intricate engravings on it had faded with time, yet it remained the only keepsake from a wedding he never wished to remember. A cruel, fateful wedding. The day he, with a heart full of hope and faith and love, had placed a wedding ring on the finger of his own mother. Minh clenched the bracelet tightly, his fingers trembling. A deep, heavy sigh escaped his lips, carrying with it the shattered sorrow of a man who had lost everything. His eyes followed the turbulent river, as if seeing in it the relentless current of life that had swept him into endless suffering with no way out. "Why?" he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Why is fate so cruel?" The wind blew once more, sweeping up golden leaves from the riverbank. They swirled in the air, like fragments of faded memories rushing back into his mind. Memories of a mother, a child, and a love mercilessly crushed by destiny. Nearly 30 years ago, Thong Son was a small, tranquil village nestled among lush green mountains. A crystal-clear stream meandered through the fragrant rice fields, carrying the essence of nature's purity. In that village, Thong was renowned as the most beautiful woman, a radiant wildflower in full bloom. Her long, silky black hair flowed like a ribbon, her clear eyes and gentle smile captivating not just the young men of the village, but even the elders, who could not help but admire her charm. Whenever Tan smiled, it was as if the entire village lit up. Many suitors pursued her, but Tan's heart had long belonged to Quang, a kind and humble man. Not only was he skilled and hardworking, but he was also known for his compassionate heart. Every evening, as he carried firewood home from the forest, his eyes would search for the familiar silhouette of the woman he loved. Sometimes a faint smile would grace his lips when he saw Tan standing at the entrance of the village, waiting by the winding path. Beneath the shade of the bamboo grove, Tan's cheeks flushed pink with shyness. At 19, she and Quang were married, a day that became the happiest in Fonsan village. The sounds of flutes and drums echoed across the mountain, blending with the villagers' joyous celebration. In her simple wedding dress, Tan looked like a celestial maiden. Quang held her hand tightly, his eyes filled with love and pride. On that day, everyone believed they would live a lifetime of happiness together. In the early months of their marriage, their home overflowed with laughter. Their small house by the stream resonated with the warm sounds of daily life. Each morning, Tan would gather vegetables in the garden while Quang ventured into the forest to chop firewood. Quang never had a chance to. In his spare time, he would pick wildflowers and bring them home for his wife. Every time, Tan would smile, her eyes shimmering with happiness. But joy was fleeting. A sudden, devastating flood struck. The Da River swelled, its raging waters sweeping away crops and leaving the village on the brink of famine. Without hesitation, Quang climbed into a small boat, determined to brave the treacherous currents and bring back rice for the starving families. Before leaving, he took Tan's hands in his own, gazing deeply into her eyes. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." It was just a boat ride, but he never returned. The fragile boat could not withstand the raging currents. The news struck like a bolt of lightning. Tan collapsed, clutching her young son tightly as tears streamed down her face. 3 days later, Quang's lifeless body was found. His form was cold, his hands stiff as if still gripping the oar. Seeing her husband, Tan broke into an anguished wail, her sorrowful cries echoing through the mountains, bringing even the onlookers to tears. But losing her husband was not the worst of it. The villagers began whispering, cruel rumors spreading like wildfire. She must be cursed. How could she not even keep her young husband alive? She's a bad omen. Anyone near her is doomed to misfortune. Each word was a dagger to her heart. The judgmental glances of the villagers made her too ashamed to step outside. Those days, Than lived like a shadow, struggling to raise her son while suffocating under the weight of isolation. At last, she made the most painful decision of her life. One early morning, as mist still blanketed the winding paths, she wrapped her son in an old blanket and set off, her heart shattered. Her footsteps led her to the home of Mr. and Mrs. Duong, a wealthy couple, yet childless. She knelt before them, her trembling hands clutching the child tightly. "Please, raise my son. I have no other choice. I only hope you will love him as your own." Her voice choked with emotion, tears streaming down her cheeks. Before leaving, she removed the only possession she had left, a small silver bracelet, and placed it in Mr. and Mrs. Duong's hands. This bracelet is a keepsake I leave for my son. If one day he asks about me, please give it to him and tell him that his mother has always loved him." As Tan turned to walk away, she felt as if she were leaving her very heart behind. With each step, a tear fell, merging into the earth beneath her feet. She dare not look back, because she knew if she glanced one more time, she would not have the strength to leave her only son behind. From that day, Tan left Fangsan village, carrying with her the unbearable sorrow of a mother forced to part with her child, along with the fragile hope that he would have a better life. But she had no idea that a cruel fate still awaited them. Minh, the name tied to his birth mother's pain, had now become Khan, the beloved son of Mr. and Mrs. Sang Duong. From the day he was adopted, Khan was showered with boundless love and care. His adopted parents were kind-hearted and compassionate. They had given everything, the very best they had, to the son they cherished as their own flesh and blood. No effort was spared in raising him. No wealth was withheld from him. All they wished for was that Khan would grow up to be a good man, living the life they had always dreamed of. Khan grew up in their loving embrace, becoming a strong young man with bright eyes and a warm smile. He was well loved in the village for his honesty, integrity, and diligence in his work. To his adoptive parents, Khan was their greatest pride, the son they believed would bring happiness and peace to their family. But then, one fateful day, during a trip to the bustling fair in the lowlands, Khan unknowingly stepped into a story he never could have foreseen. The fair was crowded, lively. Laughter and chatter filled the air. Rows of colorful stalls stretched endlessly, selling everything from food and clothing to peculiar trinkets Khan had never seen before. His curious eyes roamed from place to place, taking in the vibrant energy so different from the quiet life of his home village. And just then, a woman appeared before him. She was the owner of a small stall tucked in a quiet corner of the market. Unlike the other noisy, bustling stands, hers was neatly arranged, strangely orderly. The woman appeared to be in her early 40s, slender in build. Her dark hair was neatly tied back at the nape of her neck, her face graceful, yet her eyes carried an indescribable sorrow. It was as if she was hiding a story no one dared to ask about. Kanye didn't know why he felt so drawn to her. Perhaps it was the unusual quietness of her stall amidst the bustling market. Or maybe it was her gaze, one that seemed to see right through him, both unfamiliar and strangely familiar. He stepped closer and nodded politely. "Hello, ma'am, I have some goods. Would you be interested in buying them?" The woman lifted her head. For a brief moment, surprise flickered in her eyes when she saw Khan, but it quickly faded into a soft smile. Her voice was gentle, yet filled with quiet confidence. "Let me take a look. If I like them, I'll buy." Kanhei quickly opened his bag, explaining each item with enthusiasm. The woman listened intently, occasionally nodding. Her slender hands picked up each piece carefully, inspecting them with keen attention. After a while, she spoke. "Your goods are good. I'll take them all." Khan hid his excitement. This was his first time as a trader, and selling his products so smoothly gave him a sense of encouragement. He hesitated for a moment, trying to suppress the nervousness in his voice. "Thank you. I'm really lucky to have met someone as kind as you." The woman gave him a faint yet gentle smile. "You're new here, aren't you? I could tell right away. In this market, there aren't many honest people like you, but be careful. Don't let anyone take advantage of you." Her words took Kanhei by surprise, yet they also filled him with an unexpected warmth. A stranger's concern made his heart tremble slightly. He replied sincerely, "Yes, I'll be careful. Thank you for the advice." Before Kanhei left, the woman looked at him again, her gaze flickering with something unspoken. "You seem like a hard-working man. If you have more goods next time, bring them here. My name is Han. My stall will buy from you." Khan nodded, an indescribable feeling rising in his chest. He had no idea that this chance encounter would unravel a story filled with turmoil and tragedy, where truth and fate would change everything. Han was a woman shaped by life's trials, carrying the deep scars of her past. She had endured stormy days where even the simplest dreams were crushed by an incomplete, broken marriage. Her former husband was an addict, leaving all responsibilities to rest upon her frail shoulders. The years of suffering had etched themselves onto her heart like unhealed wounds, making her believe she would never be able to love again. But Han did not fall. After leaving that marriage, she stood up on her own, building her life from nothing but her bare hands. Years passed. She became a respected merchant, yet deep within her eyes lay an indescribable sorrow that few could ever understand. Khan, the passionate young man, was the only one who sensed that silent sadness. Each time he met Han at the market, he didn't just see a strong woman. He felt the warmth of a kind heart, a soul that had endured deep wounds yet still overflowed with compassion. Through their growing business interactions, he realized that Han was unlike any woman he had ever met. She possessed an uncanny understanding, as if she always knew what he was thinking, what he was feeling, even when he hadn't spoken a word. Their meetings became more frequent. Every time he visited her stall, Khan felt a strange warmth settle in his heart. He liked the way she quietly listened to his stories, the way she smiled gently whenever he was flustered, and the way her eyes lit up with joy when he spoke of his small achievements. Khan's heart began to stir, softly yet intensely, like the wind weaving through the leaves. Unstoppable. Unstoppable. It was a late afternoon, and after completing a large order together, they sat down to rest on the steps of the stall. The sun had tilted toward the horizon, casting a golden-orange hue over the corner of the market. The usual chatter of buyers and sellers had started to fade, leaving only a quiet space between them. Han leaned against the wooden pillar, her fingers gently smoothing the wrinkles on her worn-out ao dai. Her face carried a trace of exhaustion, but also a sense of relief after a long day. Her eyes distant, as if drifting into a faraway memory. Khan sat beside her, his gaze never leaving her. Inside him, a wave of emotion surged. The words he had held back for so long now begged to be spoken. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. After a moment of hesitation, he turned to look at her, his eyes filled with sincerity and resolve. And his voice was warm but carried a hint of trembling. I know this may be sudden, but I can't keep it inside any longer. I love you. Will you be my wife? Hen froze. His unexpected confession was like a strong gust of wind, shattering every wall she had carefully built around her heart. She looked at Khan, her eyes filled with disbelief. Her lips quivered slightly, yet no words came out. A single tear fell silently, rolling down her cheek. Han turned away, trying to hide the emotion surging within her. But how could she stop her own heart? For the first time in years, she felt it tremble so fiercely. Her voice shook as she whispered, Do you really mean that? I'm just a woman who has been through a broken marriage. I'm older than you. Kane interrupted her. His eyes shone with unwavering conviction. I don't care who you are, what you've been through, or how many years separate us. I only know that I love you. Love the person you are, love your strength, your kindness, and even the sorrow within you. I want to be with you. I want to be the one who brings you happiness, if you'll let me. Han looked up at him. Her eyes were now brimming with emotion. Never had she imagined she would hear such sincere words, especially from a young man like Han. Ha! Her heart, once cold and guarded, now felt warm again. After a long moment of silence, she nodded gently. Her voice was choked with emotion, yet filled with deep sincerity. Nice. I never dared to dream of this, but I am happy. I accept. Han's acceptance was like a ray of light piercing through Khan's heart. He smiled brightly, taking her hand and squeezing it gently, as if to reaffirm the depth of his devotion. In that moment, as the sunset faded, two hearts found harmony, but they had no idea that ahead lay a great challenge, a cruel secret that would test the love they believed was unbreakable. The wedding day. The sky was clear, and the soft sunlight cast a golden glow upon the trees surrounding the courtyard. Laughter and chatter from the guests filled the air, blending with the sounds of traditional wedding rituals. From the out of everything had been meticulously arranged, from the vibrant bouquets of fresh flowers to the lavish banquet tables. Everyone showered blessings upon the couple, Khan and Han, a pair that seemed destined never to be torn apart. At the most pivotal moment, Mr. Duong climbed forward. In his hands, he held a small wooden box. His expression was solemn, yet pride shone in his eyes. Clearing his throat, he looked at Khan, his gaze filled with deep emotion. Khan, today is the happiest day of your life. Your mother and I want to give you a keepsake. This is the silver bracelet your birth mother left behind when she entrusted you to us. We have kept it safe all these years. Now, it's time for you to have it. He opened the box. Inside, an old silver bracelet was revealed, aged but still gleaming under the sunlight. The crowd fell silent. All eyes followed his every move. But the moment the silver bracelet was revealed, Han suddenly stepped back. Her face, once radiant in her wedding dress, turned deathly pale. Her lips trembled, as if she had lost the ability to speak. Her eyes widened in shock, locked onto the bracelet, as if she were staring at a ghost from the past. Her voice broke, hoarse and fragmented. This bracelet, why is it here? This is mine. I am Khan's birth mother. The words struck like a bolt of lightning, shattering the joyous atmosphere of the wedding into a suffocating silence. The crowd froze. No one dared to believe what they had just heard. Khan stood motionless, paralyzed as if turned to stone. His legs felt unbearably heavy, refusing to move. His gaze darted from Han to his adopted parents, then to the silver bracelet in Mr. Duong's hands. The pieces of a terrible truth were falling into place, like knives slicing deep into his heart. No, this can't be, Khan screamed, his voice filled with horror and agony. We love each other. How can you be my birth mother? Han collapsed, sinking to her knees on the ground. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Her cries tore through the heavy silence, sending a wave of grief that clenched the hearts of everyone around her. She looked up at Khan, her eyes swollen with tears, her voice broken and desperate. "Kanan, I didn't know. I never knew that you are my son. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, my son." Khan stepped back, his eyes filled with unbearable pain and disappointment. He wanted to speak, but his throat felt constricted, suffocated by emotions too overwhelming to voice. Han collapsed, her shoulders trembled with each sob. Every tear that fell was like a drop of blood spilling from her heart. A heart that had endured too much loss, now shattering under the weight of a cruel truth. Mr. and Mrs. Duong stood beside her, frozen in shock and sorrow. Mr. Duong lowered his head, his voice trembling. We didn't know. That day, your mother gave you to us. She covered her face, leaving only this bracelet. We never imagined that it was Han. The air in the courtyard turned to ice. Han's choked sobs, Kanhe's vacant stare, and the sympathetic gazes of the onlookers made everything so unbearably heavy that no one could breathe. Suddenly, Kanhe turned and ran. He couldn't stay. He couldn't face the truth that had just been revealed. Kanhe reached out, calling after him. "My son, please, listen to me." But Kanhe did not stop. His figure faded into the distance. Behind him, a somber silence lingered, intertwined with muffled sobs. The wedding, meant to be the happiest day, had now become the most agonizing day. Han and Kanhan, two hearts that once believed they had found happiness, were now trapped in the merciless grip of fate. In the days following the wedding, Kanhan vanished from the world. He locked himself inside his small room, drawing the curtains shut, allowing darkness to consume everything. The room remained tidy, yet the air was suffocating with an unbearable silence. Khan sat motionless on the edge of the bed, his hollow gaze fixed on the floor. The memories of that day replayed in his mind, like a slow motion film, looping over and over. Every word, every tear shed by Han felt like knives carving deeper into his heart. The faint light seeping through the curtains was too weak to warm the room, just as it was too weak to melt the ice that had settled within him. The meals his adoptive mother left outside his door remained untouched, growing cold with time. His adopted parents could only stand before the closed door, their hearts aching, but they didn't dare to knock. They knew that right now, Khan needed to face the storm within his heart alone. As for Han, from that fateful day, she had not had a single night of peaceful sleep. Every night she sat by the window, gazing into the ink-black sky. Her face was gaunt, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion, worn by endless tears and relentless torment. She blamed herself. She blamed fate for its cruel design. How could she have ever known that the man she loved the most was, in truth, the very son she had once been forced to leave behind? In the days that followed, she made a decision, one guided by a mother's heart. She went to Khan's house, her trembling hands clutching an old embroidered handkerchief, a keepsake she had stitched years ago. She stood before his door, but couldn't bring herself to knock. Instead, she silently sank to her knees. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks as she spoke, her voice unsteady yet filled with desperate pleading. "Khan, I know you're angry. I know you're in pain, and I'm the one who deserves all the blame. But please, just listen to me, just this once." Inside the room, Khan leaned against the door. He heard every word, every broken sob, and it felt as if an invisible hand was gripping his heart, squeezing the breath from his chest. He didn't want to respond, but his tears fell silently, soaking his face. Outside, Han's voice continued to tremble through the night, weak yet unbearably heartfelt. "Do you know, my child? Back then, I had no other choice. I never wanted to leave you, but I couldn't let you grow up in contempt and extreme poverty. I believed that giving you to your adoptive parents was the only way for you to have a better life." Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to continue, as if trying to cleanse herself of all guilt. "I don't ask for your forgiveness, Khan. I only ask that you understand. I have never stopped loving you, not even for a single day. I have never forgotten you. Hate me if you must, be angry with me if you must, but don't hate yourself. None of this is your fault." Khan clenched his fist, trying to suppress the sob rising in his throat. Her words shattered the walls he had painstakingly built between himself and the world. He knew deep down that the woman outside, despite her mistakes, was still his mother, the one who had given birth to him, who had endured every hardship just so he could have a better life. After a long silence, Khan slowly stood up and opened the door. Mrs. Han flinched and looked up, her teary eyes filled with both hope and anxiety. Khan stood there, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, filled with sorrow. "Mom, I don't know what to do. I need time. Mrs. Han said nothing, only nodded gently. Her lips quivered as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she could only whisper one sentence. Just remember, I will always wait for you no matter how long it takes. For the first time, Khan looked at her for a long time. In her eyes, he saw genuine remorse, the deep sorrow of a mother who had lost everything. He understood that no matter how cruel life had been, she had always loved him with all her heart. And though forgiveness could not come immediately, he knew he could not hate the woman who had given birth to him, even if she had once left him. Years later, the small house by the Da River had completely transformed. The once weathered walls, covered in moss, were now freshly painted, glowing under the morning sunlight. The cheerful laughter of children echoed through the air, blending with the rustling of the wind through the bamboo groves, creating a warm and peaceful scene. Kana was no longer the young man burdened by the pain of his past. He had learned to let go, to face his losses and hardships, and to find joy in the present. He chose to stay, living with both his birth mother and adoptive parents, those who had sacrificed everything for him. During that time, he met Yen, a kind-hearted, humble girl from Kwang'an. Yen brought warmth and comfort to Khan like light gently seeping into the darkest corners of his soul. Her love was not as dazzling as fireworks, but steady and enduring, helping him heal the deepest wounds in his heart. Their wedding day. The small riverside house was filled with joy. Mrs. Han sat quietly in a corner of the yard, her hands trembling as she wiped away tears while watching her son in his wedding attire, his face radiant, hand in hand with the woman he loved. It was a day she had never dared to dream of, a day when her heart finally found solace after so many storms. Khan's adoptive parents, now elderly, looked at him with pride in their eyes. They knew that the hardships of the past had shaped him into a man who cherished love and valued everything he had. Life after the wedding became even more fulfilling. Yen brought laughter to the family, filling their home with warmth and affection. She cared for Mrs. Han as if she were her own mother, listening attentively whenever she shared stories of her past. The lonely days of Mrs. Han had now faded into memory. She often sat on the porch, her hands skillfully knitting sweaters for her grandchildren. Every time she watched them running and playing in the yard, a smile would form on her lips, her eyes reflecting a joy she once thought she would never experience again. On quiet afternoons, Khan would sit beside his birth mother under the old mango tree in front of the house. A gentle breeze would rustle through, sending a few golden leaves drifting to the ground. Like a silent reminder of all that had passed, Khan gently held Mrs. Han's frail hands and, in a warm, steady voice, he spoke. Mom, I know there were times when you blamed yourself, but I want you to understand that I have never once regretted being your son. I understand everything you did. I only hope that you live happily and healthily so that we can be together for a long time. Mrs. Han looked at Khan and once again tears welled up in her eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness. She gently nodded, her trembling hands grasping his tightly. Her heart felt warm, as if all the pain that once existed had now faded away. Khan's adopted parents, now frail with age, often sat on their bamboo chairs on the porch, watching their children and grandchildren gather around. They smiled at each other, knowing that the difficult days were behind them, and now they could enjoy the beautiful reward of a family filled with love. The little children, their tiny feet pattering across the yard, chirped excitedly. Daddy, Mommy, Grandma and Grandpa said if we behave, we'll get to eat ripe mangoes. Their laughter rang through the air, filling the home with warmth and joy. The small house that was once filled with tears had now become a haven of happiness. The Da River in front of their home, once wild and turbulent, carrying away so much pain, now flowed gently, peacefully, just like their lives. The story of Khan Han and Mrs. Han stands as a powerful testament to the strength of love and compassion, and above all, forgiveness. No matter how harsh life may be, when people learn to let go of hatred, cherish the beauty in life, and face difficulties with a sincere heart, happiness will always be waiting at the end of the road. The river continues to flow, time moves forward, but family love, despite all challenges, remains an eternal flame, illuminating the hearts of those who dare to love and forgive. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the heartfelt story of Khan and Mrs. Tink. Imagine for a minute, Han, through this story we are reminded that love, forgiveness, and patience can help us overcome any tragedy and hardship in life. Family is the most peaceful place, where all pain can be soothed if we learn to appreciate and protect it. If you found this story meaningful, please support our channel by clicking like, leaving a comment below to share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more inspiring and heartfelt stories in the future. Once again, thank you sincerely. Wishing you good health and happiness with your beloved family.